Hello, Alberta Community Adult Learning Program people. I'm Phil Switzer, CALP Liaison and NorQuest Instructor. Welcome to our online webinar, NorQuest Foundational Numeracy Modules, Success for Tutors and Learners. This webinar is for any CALP tutors or staff who first see prospective learners at your CALP. The goal of this session is to help learners and tutors work together to build the learner's numeracy skills. Let's get started. So to ensure tutors and numeracy learners have success together, after this webinar, you're going to be able to describe how to initially assess, place, and begin working with a learner using NorQuest's foundational numeracy materials. You can find all the resources tutors and learners need in the links below. So a prospective learner comes into your site, and ideally, within a few days, here's what happens. We see a learner working with a tutor, and we see a learner eventually working on their own to improve their numeracy skills. We can also see we have the facilitator guide and learning modules in use. How do we get to this point? Tutor helping a learner and learners working on their own. It all starts with a prospective student walking in the door. For a learner to be successful, starts with a conversation about the learner's goal. Key here is developing a relationship with the learner. You're trying to draw out and connect the learner's goal to the learning they're going to need to do. This will build a strong internal motivation to start working with you on their learning. But we need more than a person's goal to help them with learning. We need to know what level they're at. Once we know what level the learner is at, we can support them. This journey to success starts with the initial assessment and placement. Once a learner's level has been determined, they can begin working with the learning modules and a tutor, motivated and moving. So the learner's goal drives everything. As you are first meeting with the learner, talk about their goal. And if they're unsure about their math skills, suggest that they do the initial assessment to help them and their tutor. Set a time that will be quiet and have a private space for the student. Print off the assessments, have pencils, scrap paper, and even earplugs. The main focus of the assessment, help the learner move directly toward their goal. Let's look at that initial assessment right now. We'll go over how to prep for the assessment, what to do during the assessment, and what to do after the assessment to properly place the student. Here we can see the three key parts of the initial assessment. My main suggestion at this point is to pause the video and actually take 30 to 40 minutes to do the assessment yourself. Print off all the sheets, use a pencil and paper, complete all the questions and grade it. This way you'll be familiar with the questions and know what students can expect. Okay, so we see the three key parts of the initial assessment here. We've got the question booklet. There's 50 questions that are about from grade 4 to grade 8 level. Some things to note about the assessment. There's no questions on algebra. If a student gets 7 or more on all 5 areas, you'll want to do some higher level math assessments, located again in the links below. There's 10 questions on whole numbers, 10 questions on fractions, 10 on decimals, 10 on integers, and 10 on ratio and percent. We'll look at each of these in a little greater detail soon. And finally, here's the key with the placement guide. Let's go over how to prepare for the assessment. So you book the learner at a quiet time at your CALP in a private room. It's going to take the learner 30 minutes to an hour to complete the initial assessment, and then another 15 to 20 minutes for you to grade the assessment, ideally with the learner. Before you do the assessment with the learner, we've got a 3-minute reminder video of how to do the assessment, so you'll want to watch that. Print off a couple copies of the assessment and keep them on hand. Print off several of the answer sheets, provide scrap paper, provide a quiet, comfortable space, and provide earplugs if necessary. Okay, so you're all set. Everything's printed. Now, what about during the assessment? So during the assessment, calculators are not permitted. Have the learners turn off their cell phones as well. You want to totally limit all distractions. Check on the learner at about the 30-minute mark just to see how they're doing. Finally, you got to make sure to tell the learners not to guess. You and the learner need to know what areas to work on. Tell them if they don't know, just to leave it blank. Once the assessment is complete, ideally mark it with the learner. That way you can truly determine what they're having trouble with. Let's look at how to mark the assessment and determine where the learner needs to start. After the assessment, you're going to want to mark it right away. As I mentioned, ideally with the learner. This should take about 15 minutes. Let's look at that marking key right now. I'll just drag it in. We've got it right here. Here it is. As you're marking it, put the number correct right at the bottom of each column. Also, with the learner, take note of what they got right. You always want to start with a positive. Here's just some things that we see. Specifically in the first column, you're going to see if the learner has a good sense of whole numbers. Usually we do see trouble with long division and subtraction here. Okay, so what do the scores mean in terms of placement? Let's just take a look at those a little bit. In section 1, a score of less than 7 out of 10 means the learner needs to start with modules 1, 2, or 3. These are all the whole numbers modules. If they say have 3 out of 10 or less, start them with module 1. 4 or 5 out of 10, module 2, and 6 out of 10 should start with module 3. All of the modules also have pre and post tests, so you can do further assessments after the initial assessment to pin down exactly where to start. If section 1 has a score of 7 out of 10 or higher, the learner is ready to start with fractions or decimals. The order for these two modules doesn't really matter. If sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all greater than 7 out of 10, the learner is ready for GED prep course. In fact, the learner will do quite well in the GED prep course. Inform the learner where they're at, come up with a plan of where to start. It all does come back to the learner's goal. Let's take a more detailed look at each of the 5 areas in the assessment tests so you know how to best place the learner. So when working with a learner to place them, it's crucial that we focus on what they already know. As you're marking, go over each of these columns. Focus on what they got right to give the learner a positive start. The first 10 starts at whole numbers. These 10 questions will tell you quickly if the learner is going to need help with whole numbers. If the learner has 7 out of 10 or greater, they've got a good sense of whole numbers. If the learner has less than 7 out of 10, then you're going to want to start them with the whole numbers modules. The second 10 shows the learner's knowledge of fractions. If they have less than 7 out of 10 here, then start them with fractions. Decimals are in the next column. Again, if they have less than 7 out of 10, start them with decimals. Learners with less than 7 out of 10 may need some time to work on fractions as well. If students are struggling with both fractions and decimals, it doesn't really matter where they start the program. They can start with decimals or fractions. If the learner gets 7 out of 10 in either decimals or fractions, it might still be good to do a little practice in these modules. Each module has a final assessment. So let's say if they got 7 out of 10 on fractions, have them try the fractions final assessment to see if they need a little bit more time working on fractions. The fourth column has 10 questions on integers, or basically positive and negative numbers. The fifth column shows knowledge of ratio and percent. Again, any result of less than 7 out of 10 means the learner should work on that module. And a result of 7 out of 10 exactly might indicate a need for some practice and work on a module as well. So, you have to discuss that with the learner. If all 5 areas, though, are better than 7 out of 10, the learner is ready for GED prep. They're going to do actually probably quite well on GED prep because this assessment has a lot of reading and does involve reading comprehension. The most crucial thing for the assessment is that the learner not guess. If they guess, this is going to throw the results off. So overall, the foundational numeracy assessment is perfect for determining what module does the learner need to start with, what specific math skills do they need to work on, and the assessment is an excellent way to tell if the learner is ready for GED prep. Once the assessment is complete and the learner is placed, the learner and the tutor can begin working together. the learner can begin moving toward their goal. So as the learner works on and completes all the numeracy modules, they're going to get to the point where they're ready to move into GED prep. Working on and completing GED exam prep is a great way into further upgrading. Let me just give a little window into what that looks like. If a learner eventually wants to go beyond GED prep especially, GED math is about a low grade 9 level. So it's not everything a learner needs for grade 10 math and beyond. So if a learner does want to go beyond GED, their next course after, say, a GED prep would be high school prep math. It's crucial if learners want to take high school science, say biology, chemistry, or physics, that their math be at the grade 10 level at least. Okay, so that's just a quick window in what's beyond GED. Back to our main focus. We want to successfully connect a new learner with a tutor at our site. So the assessment is done. The plan for what to work on is created. The learner knows what modules they need to start with, and the learner is working with the tutor. You also know where they might need to go next: GED prep, high school prep math, math 10, etc. So next, let's look at specifically at the modules themselves. So if you go into our Google Drive, you're going to see all 7 modules. 3 are for whole numbers, so basically grades 1 to 3 level math. Then here's our fractions, decimals, integers, ratio, and percent modules, with all the files tutors and students need, including the initial assessment is here. Each of these folders contains a learning guide, a learner guide, a facilitator guide, a solution manual that shows the learner the exact steps to solve the problems, and a final module assessment. We're going to actually look at the decimal module with its student guide. So let me just pull that up right here. I'm going to pull it into the screen. Here it is right here. So we've got the decimal module. It's about 61 pages, as you can see right here. It's made into 3 main units, and each unit has exercises or lessons. A tutor is going to want to do 1 to 2 of these lessons per day with a student, followed ideally by the student working on their own for another hour at home. You can see in multiplication that there are 9 lessons, so there's lots of learning here. Here's a look at the introductory fractions. So I'm just going to scroll down. We'll look at the introductory fractions unit right here. So each of the units is and lessons has an introductory video, and you can see that here with a QR code. The student can just point their phone and open a video right off the bat. The introductory video is followed by, there's a description basically of the thinking, knowledge, and processes needed for the math, and in this case decimals. The student practice also includes, so we've got the descriptions here, followed by some examples. Oh yeah, and I want to go right over here just to show you that student practice. There we go. So the student practice here, it also includes a step-by-step video lesson for the student. The intent with the student practice, and you can see that here on the right, the intent with the student practice is that a tutor can work alongside the student, and this is actually the facilitator's guide you see right here. And you can notice how the facilitator guide indicates when something can be instructor-led. After the student practices with a tutor or on their own, there's an exercise for them to try. Once the exercise is complete, the student can check their answers, and let's just show you that actually, where they can check their answers. Yep, they can check their answers at the end or at the back of the module. So yeah, I want to summarize the process here, and we're just going to drag this back off. There you go. All right, so I call it the process for success. And so, first of all, the student can watch the video, watch that intro video. Then they're going to read on their own, basically the processes to do the math. Then the student practices with a tutor. Then the student practices with themselves. Then they can check their answers. And you can see that again here in the student manual. They can check their answers at the end. And each module is basically like this. Each module has got about 15 to 20 lessons. Each one would take about an hour. Again, I suggest about 1 to 2 lessons per day with a tutor, followed by, again, ideally, an hour that the student would do on their home later. We can also see here in the facilitator guide, so we've got that right here. In the facilitator guide, we can see these yellow boxes throughout. These give the tutors more descriptions and key terms that they're going to want to use and explain to students. Just a final thing to look at. Let's work from the student's perspective on the practice. So let's just take a look at that. So students can and should work on their own with the modules. And really, there's kind of 3 steps to success here. First of all, these videos that are embedded. They can open it with their phone, and this video exactly matches these 2 practice questions right here. So the student should watch the video once before they begin. Just watch it all the way through. Then take a look at the question. Then watch the video again and pause as needed. Then after the video, try the practice questions on their own, and if need, check the video on how to solve. The 3rd step after using the video would be to do the exercise and check the answers in the back. And if needed, check the solution manual to boot as well. So that's a model for how students can learn on their own with these modules. It all starts with them walking in the door with their goal. So reflect back on what we've gone over today and think about the process to getting learners and tutors working together. In the webinar, we learned how to assess a student's level, how to place the student, how tutors and students can work together in the modules, and how learners can learn on their own with the modules. Before my last slide with my contact information, let's take a quick look at NorQuest Foundations for Learning, or FFL courses, and where these modules fit in. So NorQuest has 6 FFL courses. If your CALP has a student in any of these, you can get $900 towards tutoring and other student support for each student. The foundational numeracy modules fit in with basically the pre-algebra course. So this course, pre-algebra, takes students really from a grade 4 to a grade 8 level. So it's critical for any learner in the pre-algebra course to ideally start by doing the initial assessment and then working with the tutor at your CALP for at least a month before enrolling. Again, that's ideal. Also to note, we've got high school prep math here. If a learner comes to your site and after testing, say starts with the decimals module, for example, but maybe they want to take a high school level science course for their post-secondary, then it might be good to first complete all the foundational numeracy modules, then have them take GED prep, followed by the GED exam, and then take high school prep math. The foundational numeracy modules will not fully prepare a learner for high school prep math, so they can either do GED prep next, or they could actually do the pre-algebra course next, because pre-algebra is also a good prep for high school prep math. Okay, so that's all for the webinar. You're all set to initially assess, place, and begin working with the learner using NorQuest Foundational Numeracy materials. Let me know if you have any questions. Here's my contact information, phil.switzer@norquest.ca. Once again, I'm Phil Switzer with NorQuest College. And yeah, just email me if you need anything. All right, take care, everyone. Have a good day.